Welcome back to BTW, Baal Tefilah Workshop, courtesy of my podcast, The DataBeis with Rabbi Eisenberg. That's me. And today we're going to do something fun. I wanted to go straight to demos, and that's what we're going to do. And originally I was thinking I wanted to do something nice. I thought maybe we'd go into Kabbalas Shabbos, which we are going to do. But since this week is the Yortzeit of Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, I thought we would go straight to the Carlebach Kabbalas Shabbos. Yes, everybody has a different opinion about Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, but nobody doubts his contribution to the world of Jewish music and Tefilah no less. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm not going to cover necessarily every single line of davening. And I'm going to reserve for a different time to go through what the different parts of Kabbalas Shabbos are really about. That I think we'll keep for the regular Kabbalas Shabbos workshop. But right now we're just going to focus on utilizing your skills as a chazan for the Carlebach Kabbalas Shabbos. Before I do, I think I need to introduce this section with some ground rules that we had mentioned in the past that I think you gotta remember now. And that is to know your audience, right? Unless you were asked to do a Carlebach davening, unless you're at a Carlebach minyan, or you're on a Shabbaton, or you're in a camp where it's expected. So probably shouldn't do it necessarily, because it might be a tircha for the tzibur, because not everybody wants a long singing davening. And you might know that your minyan wants this, but if you're going to go off on a limb and do it, so I think a rule is to, I would treat it like a surprise present, right? If you're going to give someone a surprise, the big rule for doing a surprise is you have to know that they want that. Don't surprise someone with anything that you're not sure they're absolutely going to love it, because if they don't, they'll be very upset that you did it. And no one likes to be surprised with something that's unpleasant to them. So maybe it's an afraf, and the Baal Simcha asked you to daven on Leil Shabbos, and you know that they want a Carlebach davening and that the minyan is going to be okay with it, then great, go for it. But if not, so you have to be careful. So you got to really know your audience. That was rule number 2 in the 5 things you must know as a chazan. So that's very important. Another thing I would say is that when it comes to Carlebach Kabbalas Shabbos, I would say that it's not all or nothing, right? You could sing literally every part of davening, or you could do like a chatzi halal, so to speak. We can you could sing some parts of Carlebach davening. You don't have to sing every single part. So you can still have a nice davening with the Carlebach style and not necessarily drag out the entire davening long. So that's another thing I would point out. I'll also say that even when it comes to the Carlebach davening, just like with Nusach in general, there isn't, only one way to do it. There are variations of how to do the Carlebach davening. Wherever I know it well enough, I'll call it out. But in the meantime, I'll mainly do it the way I'm familiar with it, and hopefully you can follow along and enjoy that. And you'll have an idea of what to do. So we are going to pick up from, when Yedid Nefesh is ending. If you're a shul that sings Yedid Nefesh, okay, so you're going to go from the tune into the Chun Ranana. So, and here we go. L'chun Ranana Hashem Noriya Litzur Yesheinu Nekadim Afanav Haibesana Bizmiras Nariya Okay, fine. And then we take it straight to the end of that paragraph. Arba'im shana akut bedar v'amar am tawei levavim v'heim la yadu dirachai Asher nishbati bi'api im yavon el menuchasi. And some people will end it. V'hem lo yadu dirachai Asher nishbati bi'api im yavon el menuchasi. And then Shiru L'Hashem is usually sung. Now, what's interesting about this part and Mizmar Shiru, which is in 2 paragraphs from now, is that I've grown up hearing 2 particular tunes done to those 2 particular paragraphs. And when I was in Tzfat and I was in some of the Carlebach Minyanim there, I noticed in other places in Eretz Yisrael, some places they actually reverse the tunes. So the tune that I'm about to sing for Shiru L'Hashem, some do that for Mizmar Shiru, and vice versa. But the tune that I'm most familiar with is Shiru L'Hashem, Shir Chadash, Shiru L'Hashem, Kol Haaretz, Shiru L'Hashem, Baruch Hu Shemo, Basiru Miyam Liyom Yeshuaso, Sapiru V'Goyim, Kivado V'Chol Ha'amim, Niflosav Ki Gadol Hashem, Umula Me'or, Hina'ara'u, Al Kol Elokim. Right, so it's Atasakum, I keep a moed. And again, some people do that for Mizmar Shiru. But anyway, that's that paragraph. And then you go back into the next paragraph is Hashem Malach. And for Hashem Malach, we don't actually, the reader, or the Chazan doesn't start from Ohavei Hashem, but from earlier, for the Carlebach. So it goes, Shomeo batismach Tzion, Heivatogel no b'nos Yehuda, Liman mishpatecho Hashem, Kiyato Hashem Elyon, Hayal Kol Haaretz, Miyad Na'leiso Al Kol Elokim, Ohavei Hashem, Haisenu Ra, Shomer Nafshos Chasindav, Miyad Rishoyim Yatzilem, Or Zarua Latzadik, Uli Yishrei Lev Simcha, Simchu Tzadikim B'Hashem, V'adu L'Zecher Karsho. Fine. So the next song is Mizmar Shiru L'Hashem, Shir Chadash, Ki Niflo Soso, Hoshia Lo Yemino Uzro Akachadia Hashem Yeshua So Li'nei Agoyim Gilatim Kasam Zachar Chasta Ve'emunaso Lebeis Yisrael, and so on and so forth. Now, one trick that I think is important to mention now is that one thing that tends to go as you engage in a very musical davening is your voice. So one trick that I've picked up, and especially in places where the acoustics aren't great, if it's a Carlebach Minyan, presumably people are singing with you, and if they are, it's a great opportunity to allow them to carry it when your voice is not as strong. So you start the songs, and then eventually they'll pick it up, and then you'll rest your voice in the meanwhile. Okay, so then there's that. Now, the next paragraph is Hashem Malach, which ends in Moshe v'Aaron. So there are different ways of doing this. And this is where I go back to rule number 3, which is to know yourself. You have to know your range. There are fancier ways to do this. There are simpler ways to do this. and you want to make sure you're doing something that's comfortable for your voice and something that will not make you embarrass yourself in front of everybody. Okay, so here we go. I like to try, if I can, to pick a lower key, not too low so that you're inaudible on the low notes, but at least by the time you get to the high part, you can hit the high note if you're going to go for it. There are ways to circumvent the high note. Okay? Moshe v'Aaron v'Kohanov u'Shmuel b'karei Shemo korim el Hashem v'hu yaneim. Just before we go to a Ba'amud Anon, some people like to make that even fancier. I've heard from one of my Rabbeim, Rabbi Marcus, he does it this way. Ushmuel b'karei Shemo karim el Hashem v'hu yaneim. And we're going to continue now. B'amud Anon yidaber aleihem shamiru einosav v'chog nosan lamo Hashem Elokeinu ata nisam kel nosei yisalohem v'nokeim alalilosam Hiraimimu Hashem Elokeinu v'ishtachavu Elehar kadsha ki kadosh Hashem Elokeinu. Right, so that's the exciting way to do it. And if you know yourself and you're just not going to get there, so don't go for it and then change the key in the middle. That doesn't sound good. What I would do is instead, so v'nokei malalilosam ramimu Hashem Elokeinu v'ishtachavu l'arkodsho ki kadosh Hashem Elokeinu. I think I could do that part better. I don't usually do that part. I usually go straight up for the exciting one because, well, I like that part better. But let's try this again. Hiromimu Hashem Elokeinu v'ishtachavu l'arkodsho ki kadosh Hashem Elokeinu. And fine, then we go into Mizmor LaDavid. So when it comes to Mizmor LaDavid, here also I've heard of different variances. So you can do the you can do the low part twice, which is, I don't usually hear that, but in more Israeli places, I hear them do the low part twice. So they go, Mizmor LaDavid, Havu Lashem Enelim, Havu Lashem Kavod Vos, Havu Lashem Kevod Shemo, Ishtachavu Lashem Behadras Kodesh. I'm more familiar with Mizmor LaDavid, Havu Lashem Enelim, Havu Lashem Kavod Vos, Havu Lashem Kevod Shemo, Ishtachavu Lashem Behadras Kodesh. So going just straight from the low to the high. I've also heard different variances about whether you do that song in minor or in major. So we usually do it in minor, but I think it could be the more authentic way to do it is in major. So it would be Mizmor LaDavid, Havu Lashem Nelim, Havu Lashem Kavod Vos. Something to that effect. But okay, then, some people like to sing Ana B'Koach, to Lord Get Me High. Ana B'Koach, Yidu Lasim Mincha, Tahatir Tirura. Right, that's the low part. And in the high part, Na Gibor Darisha Yechudecha, Kiva Vashomreim, Perchem Tarim Rachamim Zidkascha, Tamid Gamleim. Right, so there's different ways of doing that. When it comes to L'Chadodi, so there are so many Carlebach tunes to Lecha Dodi, and you don't have to do that just because you're davening in a Carlebach minyan, but you can. So classic is Carlebach. Reb Shlomo did this to Karibon. He also did to the Lecha Dodi. Right, high part. Shamar v'zachar b'diborecha nishmianu kel hamiuchad Hashem echad hayushmo echad l'shem ol siferes hayvelis hila. Right, so there's that tune. And many others. Just you can look them up. There's so many Carlebach Lecha Dodis. And there's a classic one for Lo Sevo Shiu going into Boi V'Shalom that a lot of people in Israel like this tune as well. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever used it, but it's a classic one. Boi V'Shalom ateres bala gam b'simcha uvtala tochemunei am sigula. So depending on if you want to go low or go high, you can go boi chala, or boi chala, l'chadani l'kras kala b'nei Shabbos nikabila, l'chadani l'kras kala b'nei Shabbos nikabila. Now, some people are not into repeating lines in davening, which I completely understand. I think Lecha Dodi is one of the more lenient places to do that if you want to do that. I would say as a rule, you should try not to repeat lines in davening. Certain places, it's absolutely inappropriate, halachically. But, just to be aware. So, that's Lecha Dodi. And then there's classic Mizmar Shel Yom HaShabbos. And again, you don't have to do every line to Carlebach. But these are just some classics. Is more shir Yom HaShabbos. You could just sing that line and just as the intro, and then just go into it after. And then for Tzadikat Marifrach, if you want to keep the Carlebach going there, and if you're able to, and if it's not going to bother anyone, Tzadik katamar yifrach Yerez malabana niske Shisulim miveis Hashem V'chatros Elokeinu yafrichu Ninuvun v'seiva V'sheinim v'ra'ananim yiyu Le'agir ki asher Hashem Tzuri v'lo ablasavo. And some people like to sing also Hashem Aloch, the tune of Laman Achai, but I don't know why you would waste it there because there's a Laman Achai later in the davening. So if you want, you can do Hashem Aloch Yeus Lavesh. But again, I would save it for Laman Achai, because why not? Right, so later in davening, after Bameh Madlikin, so you have that opportunity. So Laman Achai v'reya adabrana shalom b'ach leman v'es Hashem Elokeinu avar jadav lach Hashem ozli amoyitin Hashem yivarech esamo v'shalom. So you have that opportunity as well. And that basically gets us to the end. The only thing I would add is if you want to continue by Vishamru to sing that to the tune of Reb Shlomo's Mimkomcha, not the fancy long slow Mimkomcha, but the other one. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos. So you have that opportunity as well. And by the high part, Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael osi le'olam. Right, so you have that. And if you're really Carlebach stubborn and you want to take it all the way to the end, so when you get up to Kaddish, if you want to do the Krakow Niggin, you can do that. And the high part. And I think that basically takes care of the Carlebach Kabbalas Shabbos. Thank you for tuning in. Bezras Hashem, next time we're going to do some more standard stuff. But I hope you enjoyed that for now. Thank you for tuning into the DataBeis. Thank you for tuning into Tefilah Workshop.